Welcome to the Student Affairs One Thing, a podcast that asks a simple question of seasoned student affairs professionals. What is one thing you have learned that has helped shape your professional career? I'm your host, Stuart Brown, the developer of studentaffairs.com, one of the most accessed websites by student affairs professionals. On our pages, we have the most cost-effective job posting board, listing hundreds of open student services positions, a wide range of webinars, and a virtual exhibit hall. We would like to thank our sponsor, the National Society of Leadership and Success, the largest leadership honor society in the nation, providing an accredited 5-step leadership development program for members to build their leadership skills. With chapters at over 700 colleges across the country, the NSLS delivers guaranteed student engagement, increased student retention, and is financially self-sustainable. Learn more at nsls.org/our-program. On today's episode, I am very pleased to have Dr. Nancy Crimmin, who has been in the field of student affairs for over 35 years. She was a former NASPA Region 1 Vice President, Dean of Campus Life at Assumption College, and former President of Becker College. Welcome to the program, Nancy.
Thank you, Stu. Happy to be here.
So, what is your one thing?
I'm going to talk today about keeping the positive or the good stuff. What I mean by that and where this came from was well over 35 years ago in one of my first graduate classes. My faculty member and advisor was leading a conversation about how to manage the emotional toll that this work can sometimes have on ourselves, how we feel, how we manage things, and our emotional health. So the conversations back then might have sounded a little bit different than they do today, but the themes are really the same. We talked about taking care of yourself and taking time, what we might say now, balance and self-care, talking to a trusted family member, friend, mentor, stepping away for a bit and taking some space, all the common things, maybe some professional counseling if it really feels like this is getting to be too much. One of her suggestions that has really stuck with me my entire career was to keep the positive, keep the good stuff that comes your way. And what she meant by that was when you get a note, something small from a student, a parent, a faculty member, your supervisor, a colleague, keep it. Get a box, put it on your shelf, and keep the good stuff. Tuck it away. You never know when you might want to sit down someday and go through that and how that can help put in perspective the work that we do, because sometimes our days aren't filled with the good stuff. I thought it sounded like a good idea. It didn't really hit home till 2 years later, my first job, postmasters, the first note came. It was very short from a student who lived in my building, who I just sat up with the night before talking about a roommate situation. To me, it was all in a day's work. But then the note came. And she said, thank you. It meant a lot. It put things in perspective, regardless. I kept the note. And I went out and I bought a box. A pink box, because that makes me happy. And I put the note in the box. And then another note came. This one was from a parent. Thank you for helping out my son. He had a real difficult semester. You made a difference. I put it in the box. And so on. It just kept going. It's been over 35 years. And I just kept adding to the box. Eventually, notes changed. And you didn't get a hard copy note into campus mail or with a stamp from the post office. You got an email. I print them off. Put them in the box. Eventually, every once in a while, I should say, I would take the box down, read through some things. Maybe a fond memory would pop up. Sometimes I might not even remember who this particular student was, but now I remember how I made her feel. Or she felt seen, she felt heard, appreciated perhaps. Over time, I bought some really cute notepaper and stationery, and I started sending notes. Maybe to someone whose program I attended, to thank them for a great job or to say how much I enjoyed it. Or if I knew someone was going through a hard time, just acknowledging that and saying, I'm here. If you need anything, I'm here. Doesn't have to be long. It was just a quick thing. Maybe I bought a card and sent it off. But I really have tried to make that part of my work. We talk a lot about gratitude and appreciation and how important it is, and especially in challenging times, to know that someone sees you, that they heard you, that they appreciate you, can make all the difference in the world. And I've shared this thought about the box countless times. And I love hearing that people have a box because they remembered that conversation. And I like to think that when I send a note, it makes a difference, because I know when I receive a note, even in the most challenging of personal times or professional times, how much it makes a difference to me. And regardless of where I've been in my professional journey, that has made a difference. And like I said, I really hope that my note, my card, maybe a phone call, but something has made a difference. And don't we all need that, especially now during these challenging times? And work is challenging in and of itself. And adding all the external pressures and adding all that's happening in the world, sometimes it feels overwhelming. And so taking the box off the shelf, sitting down, maybe with a beverage of choice, and just reading through how I made a difference or how you made a difference. If you look through your box, maybe it's a file. It doesn't have to be a box. But showing appreciation and gratitude can really help someone put their work in perspective. Like I said, especially during the tough times, remembering why we do this work, remembering the impact that we have, and taking note of that and being cognizant of that, I think helps us get through the challenging times. It also puts things in perspective. So that's my one thing.
I think that's such a great one thing. And it really resonates with me because a couple of years ago, I did a writing project and I wrote hundreds of notes. And one of my personal professional goals is always to write a note to students, to everyone that you've talked about.
Right.
Because, and the reaction, especially now, I mean, 35 years ago, it was common practice. You write a note. There was no such thing as email. So I make it a point to write a note, address it to their home address. Mm-hmm. I put a special stamp on it. And the comments I get back, I mean, people are almost in tears sometimes because they don't get that anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just, it's getting to be this lost art. So to have something where, whether it's an email, a physical note, to be putting into that box, and it's such a simple thing. I mean, I would hope listeners would hear you and say, mm-hmm. oh my goodness, what a fantastic idea to have that and tucked away, because mm-hmm. everyone's received notes. You put it here, you put it there, you mm-hmm. kind of lose track. So mm-hmm. I think it's a very poignant story, and it can be a very impactful. Like you said, we're dealing with challenging times right now, and who doesn't need a pick-me-up? Mm-hmm. Go to your box, and I'm sure you go through those old ones, you smile, mm-hmm. you laugh to yourself about, oh, right, but it does pick you up.
Mm-hmm. And I received one of your notes a long time ago, Stu, and I'm sure it's in my box. When I cleaned out my office recently, I actually took the box and I emptied it into a plastic trash bag. And I thought, okay, I don't need this. And 5 minutes later, I went back and I dug every single one of those notes out of the box, put them back in, took them home, and that night spread them all out on my kitchen island. And I went through every single one of them. Who said, thank you. My son was going through challenging cancer treatments, and when you were in housing, you helped us with his situation, and it just made it easier. And you're right. You laugh, you cry. And I have to say, there's this one parent of a student who's now, the student is in the field, has been in the field for quite a while. This mom sends me a card every Mother's Day, Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, every year with a note. She always has since her daughter graduated probably 15 years ago. And
okay, I'm going to have to stop you because I'm crying.
But assistant would come in and she said, here's Mary's card, because we just know like clockwork, I'm going to hear from Mary. And I send her things back. One time I sent her a box of stationery and note cards to say thank you for all of her notes.
Well, again, I really hope people listening to this take this idea to heart. And let's give credit to the faculty member. Is that?
Yes. Dr. Delight Champagne, retired from the Springfield College master's program. She was there for many, many years. Many of your listeners have come through Delight's program, I'm sure, and know exactly who I'm talking about, especially if you're in the Northeast, in Region 1 for NASPA. But yes, it was Dr. Delight Champagne.
Nancy, thank you so much for sharing this story. I think this is something where we're going to be, going through social media and stuff. And I would love when we start posting your episode to put up some hashtags, or I don't know, we'll call it the student affairs box or something. And I would love for people to be posting pictures of their boxes.
Oh, that would be great.
So maybe you're starting something.
I hope so. Well, when I posted online about that night recently where I went through everything, I posted it on my Facebook page and I tagged, I think it was 99 people. Facebook lets you tag first. People from my box, former students in the field that I remain close to, in or out of the field, other professionals around the country. And the reaction from that was, oh, I remember that, Nancy, I have a box. So there are a lot of people out there that have a box, because I taught in the Springfield program for a while, that intro course, and I always told that story.
Nancy, thank you so much for sharing your one thing.
Thanks, Stu.
You have been listening to the Student Affairs One Thing, a podcast that asks a simple question of seasoned student affairs professionals. What is one thing you have learned that has helped shape your professional career? I've been your host, Stuart Brown, the developer of studentaffairs.com, one of the most accessed websites by student affairs professionals. I hope you will join us next time for another episode of the Student Affairs One Thing.